All right, time to continue on. We're going to be continuing on just before chapter 2, the literal page before. Once again, this is for Fangirl, for anybody doing the reading along, and for anybody who is at least watching the first segment before they start reading along. Yes, there is a corgi in this chair with a fez because fezzes are cool. So, with that said, time to continue on with the reading. There was a boy in Simon's room, a boy with slick black hair and cold gray eyes. He was spinning around, holding a cat high in the air, while a girl jumped and clutched at it. "Give it back," the girl said. "You'll hurt him." The boy laughed and held the cat higher, then noticed Simon standing in the doorway and stopped, his face sharpening. "Hello," the dark-haired boy said, letting the cat drop to the floor. It landed on all 4 feet and ran from the room. The girl ran after it. The boy ignored them, tugging his school jacket neatly into place and smiling with the left side of his mouth. "I know you. You're Simon Snow, the mage's heir." He held out his hand smugly. "I'm Tyrannus Basilton Pitch, but you can call me Baz. We're going to be roommates." Simon scowled and ignored the boy's pale hand. "What did you think you were what did you think you were doing with her cat?" From Chapter 3, Simon Snow and the Mage's Heir, copyright 2001 by Gemma T. Leslie. Two. In books, when people wake up in a strange place, they always have that distorted moment when they don't know where they were, or where they. I'm just gonna give it a go again. In books, when people wake up in a strange place, they always have that disoriented moment when they don't know where they are. That had never happened to Kath. She always remembered falling asleep. But it felt weird to hear her same old alarm going off in this brand new place. The light in the room was strange, too yellow for morning, and the dorm air had a detergenty twang she wasn't sure she'd get used to. Kath picked up her phone and turned off the alarm, remembering that she still hadn't texted Abel. She hadn't even checked her email or her fanfics account before she went to bed. "First day," she texted Abel now. "More later. XO, etc." The bed on the other side of the room was still empty. Kath got used to this. Maybe Reagan would spend all her time in her boyfriend's room, or his apartment. Her boyfriend looked older. He probably lived off campus with 20 other guys, in some ramshackle house with a couch in the front yard. Even with the room to herself, Kath didn't feel safe changing in here. Reagan could walk in at any minute. Reagan's boyfriend could walk in at any minute. Either one of them could be a cell phone camera pervert. Kath took her clothes to the bathroom and changed in a stall. There was a girl in the sinks, desperately trying to make friendly eye contact. Kath pretended not to notice. She finished getting ready with plenty of time to eat breakfast, but didn't feel up to braving the dining hall. She still didn't know where it was or how it worked. In new situations, all the trickiest rules are the ones nobody bothers to explain to you, and the ones that you can't Google. Like, where does the line start? What food can you take? Where are you supposed to stand? Then, where are you supposed to sit? Where do you go when you're done? Why is everybody watching you? Bah! Kath broke open a box of protein bars. She had 4 more boxes and 3 giant jars of peanut butter shoved under her bed. If she paced herself, she might not have to face the dining hall until October. She flipped open her laptop while she chewed on a carbo oat bar and clicked through her fanfics account. There was a bunch of new comments on her page, all people wringing their hands because Kath hadn't posted a new chapter of Carry On yesterday. Hey guys, she typed. Sorry about yesterday. First day of school, family stuff, etc. Today might not happen either, but I promise you I'll be back in black on Tuesday and that I have something especially wicked planned. Peace out, Magic Kath. Walking to class, Kath couldn't shake the feeling that she was pretending to be a college student in a coming of age movie. The setting was perfect. Rolling green lawns, brick buildings, kids everywhere with backpacks. Kath shifted her bag uncomfortably on her back. Look at me. I'm a stock photo of a college student. She made it to her American history 10 minutes early, which everybody. Uh, she made it to her American history 10 minutes early, which still wasn't early enough to get a desk at the back of the class. Everybody in the room looked awkward and nervous, like they'd spent way too much time deciding what to wear. Start as soon as you mean to go on, Kath had thought when she laid out her clothes last night. Jeans, Simon t-shirt, green cardigan. The boy sitting in the desk next to her was wearing earbuds with a self-consciously self-consciously bobbing his head. Um, the girl on Kath's other side kept flipping her hair from one shoulder to the other. Kath closed her eyes. She could feel their desk creaking. She could smell their deodorant. Just knowing they were there made her feel tight and cornered. If Kath had slightly less pride, she could have taken this class with her sister. She and Ren both needed the history credits. Maybe she could be taking classes with Ren while they still had a few in common. They weren't interested in any of the same subjects. Ren wanted to study marketing and maybe get a job in advertising like their dad. Kath couldn't imagine having any sort of job or career. She majored in English, hoping that meant she could spend the next 4 years reading and writing, and maybe the next 4 years after that. Anyway, she'd already tested out a freshman comp when she met with her advisor in the spring. Kath convinced him she could handle Intro to Fiction Writing, a junior level course. It was the only class, maybe the only thing about college, Kath was looking forward to. The professor who taught it was an actual novelist. Kath had read all three of her books about decline and desolation in rural America over the summer. Why are you reading that? Wren asked when she noticed. What? Something without a dragon or an elf on the cover. I'm branching out. Shh, Wren said, covering the ears on the movie poster above her bed. Baz will hear you. Baz is Baz is secure in our relationship, Kath said, smiling despite herself. Thinking about Wren now made Kath reach for her phone. Wren had probably gone out last night. It had sounded like the whole campus was up partying. Kath felt under siege in her empty dorm room, shouting, laughing, music, all of it coming from every direction. Wren couldn't have been able to resist the noise. Kath dug her phone out of her backpack. You up? Send. A few seconds later, her phone chimed. Isn't that my line? Too tired to write last night, Kath typed. I went to bed at 10. Chime. Neglecting your fans already? Kath smiled. Always so jealous of my fans. Have a good day. Yeah, you too. A middle-aged Indian man in a reassuring tweed jacket walked into the lecture hall. Kath turned down her phone and slid it into her bag. When she got back to her dorm, she was starving. At this rate, her protein bars wouldn't last a week. There was a boy sitting outside her room, the same one, Reagan's boyfriend. Reagan's cigarette buddy? Cather, he said with a smile. He started to stand up as soon as he saw her, which was more of a production than it should have been. His legs and arms were too long for his body. It's Kath, she said. Are you sure? He ran a hand through his hair like he was confirming that it was still messy. Because I really like Cather. I'm sure, she said flatly. I've had a lot of time to think about it. He stood there, waiting for her to open the door. Is Reagan here? Kath asked. If Reagan were here, he smiled, I'd already be inside. Kath pinched her key, but didn't open the door. She wasn't up for this. She was already overdosing on new and other today. Right now, she just wanted to curl up on her strange squeaky bed and Inhale 3 protein bars. She looked over at the boy's shoulder. When is she getting here? He shrugged. Cath's stomach clenched. I can't just let you in, she blurted. Why not? I don't even know you. Are you kidding? He laughed. We met yesterday. I was in the I was in the room when you met me. Yeah, but I don't know you. I don't even know Reagan. Are you going to make her wait outside too? Look, Kath said. I can't just let strange guys into my room. I don't even know your name. This whole situation is too rapey. Rapey? You understand, she said, right? He dropped an eyebrow and shook his head, still smiling. Not really, but now I don't want to come in with you. The word rapey makes me feel uncomfortable. Me too, she said gratefully. He leaned against the wall and slid back onto the floor, looking up at her. Then he held up his hand. I'm Levi, by the way. Kath frowned and took his hand lightly, still holding her keys. Okay, she said, then opened the door and closed it as quickly as possible behind her. She grabbed her laptop and her protein bars and crawled into the corner of her bed. Kath was trying to Kath was trying to Kath was trying to pace inside of the room, but there wasn't enough floor. It already felt like a prison in here, especially now that Reagan's boyfriend, Levi, was standing guard, or sitting guard, or whatever out in the hall. Kath would feel better if she could just talk to somebody. She wondered if it was too soon to call Ren. She called her dad instead and left a voicemail. She texted Abel, Hey, one down. What up? She opened up her sociology book, then her laptop, then got up to open a window. It was warm out. People were chasing each other with Nerf guns outside a fraternity house. Across the street, Pi Kappa, weird-looking O. Kath pulled out her phone and dialed. Hey, Ren answered. How was your first day? Fine. How was yours? Good, Red said. Ren always managed to sound breezy and nonchalant. I mean, nerve-wracking, I guess. I went to the wrong building for statistics. That sucks. The door opened, and Reagan and Levi walked in. Reagan gave Kath an odd look, but Levi just smiled. Yeah, Ren said. It only made me a few minutes late, but I still felt stupid. Hey, Courtney and I are on our way to dinner. Can I call you back, or do you just want to meet us for lunch tomorrow? I think we're going to start meeting at Selleck Hall at noon. Do you know where that is? I'll find it, Kath said. Okay, cool. See you later. Cool, Kath said, pressing end and putting her phone in her pocket. Levi already unfurled himself across Reagan's bed. Make yourself useful, Reagan said, throwing up a crumpled sheet at him. Hey, she said to Kath. Hey, Kath said. She stood there for a minute, waiting for some sort of conversation to happen, but Reagan didn't seem interested. She was going through all her boxes like she was looking for something. How was your first day? Levi asked. It took a second for Kath to realize she was talking to her. Fine, she said. You're a freshman, right? He was making Reagan's bed. Kath wondered if he was planning to stay the night. That would not be on at all. He was still looking at her, smiling at her, so she nodded. Did you find your classes? Yeah. Are you meeting people? Yeah, she thought. You people. Not intentionally, she said. She heard Reagan snort. Where are your pillowcases? Levi asked the closet. Boxes, Reagan said. She started emptying a box, setting things on Reagan's desk, as if he knew where they went. His head hung forward like it was only loosely connected to his neck and shoulders, like it was one of those action figures that's held together inside by worn-out rubber bands. Levi looked a little wild. He and Reagan both did. People tend to pair off that way, Kath thought, in match sets. So, what are you studying? He asked Kath. English, she said, then waited too long to say, What are you studying? He seemed delighted to be asked the question, or any question. Range management. Kath didn't know what that meant, but she didn't want to ask. Please don't start talking about range management, Reagan groaned. Let's just make that a rule for the rest of the year. No talking about range management in my room. It's Catherine's room, too, Levi said. Kath, Reagan corrected him. What about when you're not here? He asked Reagan. Can we talk about range management when you're not actually in the room? When I'm not actually in the room, she said, I think you're going to be waiting out in the hall. Kath smiled back at Reagan's head. Then she saw Levi watching her and stopped. Everyone in the class looked this way. Uh, Everyone in the classroom looked this way. Yeah, I messed up again. Everyone in the classroom looked. This was what they'd been waiting for all week. It was like they were all waiting for a concert to start, or perhaps movie premiere. When Professor Piper walked in a few minutes late, the first thing Kath noticed was she was smaller than she looked in the photos on her book jackets. Maybe this was stupid. They were just headshots after all, but Professor Piper really filled them up with her high cheekbones. Her high, wide, watered-down blue eyes and spectacular head of long brown hair. In person, the professor's hair was just as spectacular, but streaked with gray and a little bushier than in the pictures. She was so small she had to do a little hop to sit down on top of her desk. So, she said instead of hello, welcome to fiction writing. I recognize a few of you, she smiled in the room full of people who weren't Kath. Kath was clearly the only freshman in the room. She was just starting to figure out what marked the freshmen. The two new backpacks, makeup on girls, jockey Hot Topic shirts on the boys, everything on Kath. From her new red Vans to the dark purple eyeglasses she'd picked out at Target. All the upperclassmen wore heavy black Ray-Ban frames. All the professors, too. If Kath got a pair of black Ray-Bans, she could probably order a gin and tonic around without getting carded. Well, Professor Piper said, I'm glad you're all here. Her voice was warm and breathy. You could say, she purred, without reaching too far, and she talked just softly enough that everyone had to sit really still to hear her. We have a lot to do this semester, so let's not waste another minute of it. Let's dive right in. She leaned forward on the desk, holding onto the lip. Are you ready? Will you dive with me? Most people nodded. Kath looked down at her notebook. Okay, let's start with the question that doesn't really have an answer. Why do we write fiction? One of the older students, a guy, decided he was game to express ourselves, he offered. Sure, Professor Piper said. Is that why you write? The guy nodded. Okay, why else? Because we like the sound of our own voices, a girl said. She had hair like Wren's, but maybe even cooler. She looked like Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby, wearing a pair of Ray-Bans. Yes, Professor Piper laughed. It was a fairy laugh, Kath thought. That's why I write, definitely. That's why I teach. They all laughed with her. Why else? Why do I write? Kath tried to come up with a profound answer, knowing she wouldn't speak up even if she did. To explore new worlds, someone said. To explore old ones, someone else said. Professor Piper was nodding. To be somewhere else, Kath thought. So, Professor Piper purred. Maybe to make sense of ourselves. Or maybe to make sense of ourselves? To set ourselves free, a girl said. To set ourselves to get free of ourselves. To show people what it's like inside our heads, said a boy in tight red jeans. Assuming they want to know it all, Professor Piper added. Everyone laughed. To make people laugh, to get attention, because it's all we know how to do. Speak for yourself, the professor said. I play the piano, but keep going. I love this. I love it. To stop hearing the voices in her head, said the boy in front of Kath. He had short, dark hair and came to a dusky point in the back of his neck. To stop, Kath thought. To stop being anything or anywhere at all. To leave our mark, Mia Farrow said. To create something that will outlive us. The boy in front of Kath spoke up again. Asexual reproduction. Kath imagined herself at her laptop. She tried to put into words how it felt. What happened when it was good, when it was working, when the words were coming out of her before she knew what they were, bubbling up in her chest like rhyming, like rapping, like rope jumping. She thought jumping just before the rope hits your ankles. To share something true, another girl said, another pair of Ray-Bans. Kath shook her head. Why do we write fiction? Professor Piper asked. Kath looked down at her notebook. To disappear. He was so focused and frustrated. He couldn't even see the girl with the red hair sit down at his table. She had pigtails and old-fashioned pointy spectacles, the kind you'd wear to a fancy dress party if you were going as a witch. If you're going to tire yourself out, the girl said, if you, I'm just trying to do this right, Simon grunted, tapping the 2-pence coin again with his wand and furrowing his brow painfully. Nothing happened. Here, she said, crisply waving her hand over the coin. She didn't have a wand, but she wore a large purple ring. There was yarn wound around it to keep it on her fingers. Fly away home. With a shiver, the coin grew 6 legs and a thorax and started to scuttle away. The girl swept it off the desk into a jar. How did you do that? Simon asked. She was a first year too, just like him. He could tell by the green shield on the front of her sweater. You don't do magic, she said, trying to smile modestly and mostly succeeding. You are magic. Simon stared at the 2p ladybird. I'm Penelope Bunce, the girl said, holding out her hand. I'm Simon Snow, he said, taking it. I know, Penelope said and smiled. From Chapter 8, Simon Snow and the Mage's Heir. Copyright 2001 by Gemma T. Leslie. 3. It was impossible to write like this. First of all, their dorm room was way too small. A tiny little rectangle just wide enough on each side of the door for their beds. When the door opened, it actually hit the end of Kath's mattress and just deep enough to squeeze in a desk on each side between the beds and the windows. If either of them had brought a couch, it would take up all the available space in the middle of the room. Neither of them had brought a couch or a TV or any cute Target lamps. Reagan didn't seem to have brought anything personal besides her clothes and a completely illegal toaster. And beside Levi, who was lying on her bed with his eyes closed, listening to music while Reagan banged at her computer, a crappy PC, just like Kath's. Kath was used to sharing a room. She'd always shared a room with Ren, but their room at home was almost 3 times as big as this one, and Ren didn't take up nearly as much space as Reagan. Figurative speech had space. Ren didn't feel like company. Kath still wasn't sure what to make of Reagan. On one hand, Reagan didn't seem interested in staying up all night, braiding each other's hair and becoming best friends forever. That was a relief. On the other hand, Reagan didn't seem interested in Kath at all. Actually, that was a bit of a relief too. Reagan was scary. She did everything so forcefully. She swung the door open, she slammed it shut. She was bigger than Kath, a little taller, and a lot more buxom. Seriously, buxom. She just seemed bigger. On the inside, too. Alright, I gotta pause for a second, because I have to believe that is a Doctor Who reference, but that's all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, sorry to break the flow of reading, but I noticed that the first time, and I just wanted to point it out. Okay, resuming reading. When Reagan was in the room, Kath tried to stay out of her way. She tried not to make eye contact. Reagan pretended Kath wasn't there, so Kath pretended that too. Normally, this seemed to work out for both of them. But right At the moment, pretending not to exist was making it really hard for Kath to write. She was working on a tricky scene, Simon and Baz arguing about whether vampires could ever truly be considered good, and also whether the two of them should go to the graduation ball together. It was supposed to be very funny and romantic and thoughtful, which were usually Kath's specialty. She was pretty good with treachery too, and talking dragons, but she couldn't get past. Simon swept his honey brown hair out of his eyes and sighed. She couldn't even let Baz move. She couldn't stop thinking about Reagan and Levi sitting behind her. Her brain was stuck on intruder alert. Plus, she was starving. As soon as Reagan and Levi left the room for dinner, Kath was going to eat an entire jar of peanut butter. If they ever left for dinner, Reagan kept banging on like she was going to type right through the desk, and Levi kept not leaving, and Kath's stomach was starting to growl. She grabbed a protein bar and walked out of the room, thinking she'd just take a quick walk down the hall to clear her head. But the hallway was practically a meet and greet. Every door was propped open but theirs. Girls were milling around, talking and laughing. The whole floor smelled like burnt microwave popcorn. Kath slipped into the bathroom and sat in one of the stalls, unwrapping her protein bar and letting nervous tears trickle down her cheeks. God, she thought. God, okay, this isn't that bad. There's actually nothing wrong. Actually, what's wrong, Kath? Nothing. She felt tight everywhere, snapping, and her stomach was on fire. She took out her phone and wondered what Ren was doing. Uh, probably choreographing dance sequences to Lady Gaga songs. Probably trying on her roommate's sweaters. Probably not sitting on a toilet. Uh, probably, probably not sitting on a toilet eating an almond flaxseed bar. Kath could call Abel, but she knew he was leaving for Missouri Tech tomorrow. His family was throwing him a huge party tonight with homemade tamales and his grandmother's coconut yo-yos, which were so special. They didn't even sell them in the family bakery. Abel worked in the panaderia, and his family lived above it. His hair always smelled like cinnamon and yeast. Jesus, Kath was hungry. She pushed her protein bar wrapper into the feminine hygiene box and rinsed off her face before she went back to her room. Reagan and Levi were walking out, thank God, and finally. See ya, Reagan said. Rock on, Levi smiled. Kath felt like collapsing when the door closed behind them. She grabbed another protein bar, flopped onto the wooden captain's chair. She was starting to like this chair and opened a drawer to prop up her foot. Simon swept his honey brown hair out of his eyes. Just because I can't think of any heroic vampires doesn't mean they don't exist. Boz stopped trying to levitate his steamer trunk and gave Simon a flash of gleaming fang. Good guys wear white, Boz said. Have you ever tried to get blood out of a white cape? Selick Hall was a dormitory right in the middle of campus. You could eat there if you didn't live there. Kath usually waited in the lobby for Ren and Courtney so she wouldn't have to walk into the cafeteria alone. So, what's your roommate like? Courtney asked as they moved through the salad bar line. She asked like she and Kath were old friends. Like Kath had any idea what Courtney was like outside her taste for cottage cheese with peaches. The salad bar at Selick was completely whack. Cottage cheese with peaches, canned pears with shredded cheddar. What is up with this? Kath asked, lifting a scoop of cold kidney and green bean salad. Maybe it's another Western Nebraska thing, Ren said. There are guys in our dorm who wear cowboy hats, like, all the time, even when they're just walking down the hall. I'm going to get a table, Courtney said. Hey, Kath watched Ren pile vegetables on her plate. Did we ever write any fic with Simon and Baz dancing? I don't remember, Ren said. Why, are you writing a dance scene? Waltzing, up on the ramparts. Romantic. Ren looked around the room for Courtney. I'm worried that I'm making Simon too fluffy. Simon is fluffy. I wish you were reading it, Cass said, following her to the table. Isn't every ninth grader in North America already reading it? Ren sat down next to Courtney. And Japan, Cass said. I'm weirdly huge in Japan. Courtney leaned towards Kath, swooping in, like she was in on some big secret. Kath, Ren told me that you write Simon Snow stories. That's so cool. I'm a huge Simon Snow fan. I read all the books when I was a kid. Kath unwrapped her sandwich skeptically. They're not over, she said. Courtney took a bite of her cottage cheese, not catching the correction. I mean, Kath said the books aren't over. Book 8 doesn't come out until next year. Tell us about your roommate, Ren said, smiling flatly at Kath. There's nothing to tell. Then make something up. Ren was irritated. Ren was irritated, which irritated Kath. But then Kath thought about how glad she was to be eating food that required silverware, and talked to someone who wasn't a stranger, and decided to make an effort with Ren's shiny new roommate. Her name is Reagan. She has reddish brown hair, and she smokes. Courtney wrinkled her nose. In your room? She hasn't really been in the room much. Ren looked suspicious. You haven't talked? Sorry. We've said hello, Cass said. I've talked to her boyfriend a little. What's her boyfriend like? I don't know. Tall? Well, it's only been a few days. I'm sure you'll get to know her. Then Ren changed the subject to something that happened at some party she and Courtney had gone to. They'd only been living together 2 weeks, and already they slew into, slew, eh. They'd only been living together 2 weeks, and already they had a slew of inside jokes that went right over Kath's head. Kath ate her turkey sandwich and 2 servings of French fries, and shoved a second sandwich into her bag when Ren wasn't paying attention. Reagan finally stayed in their room that night. Levi did not. Thank God. She went to bed while Kath was still typing. Is the light bothering you? Kath asked, pointing at the lamp built into her desk. I could turn it off. It's fine, Reagan said. Kath put in earbuds so she wouldn't hear Reagan's falling asleep noises. Breathing, sheets brushing, bed creaking. How can she just fall asleep like that with a stranger in the room? Kath wondered. Kath left the earbuds in uh, when she finally crawled into her own bed and pulled the comforter up high over her head. You still haven't talked to her? Ren asked at lunch the next week. We talk, Kath says. She says, would you mind closing the window? And I say, that's fine. Also, hey, we exchange hays. Sometimes twice daily. It's getting weird, Ren said. Kath poked at her mashed potatoes. I'm getting used to it. It's still weird. Really? Kath asked. You're really going to start talking about how I got stuck with a weird roommate? Ren sighed. What about her boyfriend? Haven't seen him for a few days. What are you doing this weekend? Homework, I guess. Writing, Simon. Courtney and I are going to a party tonight. Where? The Triangle House, Courtney said. She said it the same way you'd say the Playboy Mansion if you were a total D-bag. What's the Triangle House? Kath asked. It's an engineering fraternity, Ren said. So they get drunk and build bridges? They get drunk and design bridges. Wanna come? Nah, Kath took a bite out of roast beef and potatoes. Dinner at the it was always Sunday night dinner in the Selleck dining room. Drunk nerds, not my thing. You like nerds. Not nerds who join fraternities, Kath said. That's a whole subclass of nerds I'm not interested in. Did you make Abel sign a sobriety pledge before he left Missouri? Is Abel your boyfriend? Courtney asked. Is he cute? Kath ignored her. Abel isn't going to turn into a drunk. He can't even tolerate caffeine. That right there is some faulty logic. You know I don't like parties, Ren. And you know what Dad says. You have to try something before you can say you don't like it. Seriously, you're using Dad to get me to a frat party I have tried parties. There was one at Jesse's with the tequila. Did you try the tequila? No, but you did, and I helped clean it up when you puked. Wren smiled wistfully and smoothed her long bangs across her forehead. Drinking tequila is more about the journey than the destination. You'll call me, Cass said, right? If I puke? If you need help. I won't need help, but you'll call me? God, Kath, yes. Relax, okay? But, sir, Simon pushed, do I have to be his roommate every year until we leave Watford? The maid smiled indulgently and ruffled Simon's caramel brown hair. Being matched with your roommate is a sacred tradition at Watford. His voice was gentle but firm. The crucible cast you together. You're to watch out for each other, to know each other as well as brothers. Yeah, but sir, Simon shuffled his chair. The crucible must have made a mistake. My roommate's a complete git. He might even be evil. Last week someone spelled my laptop closed, and I know it was him. He practically cackled. The mage gave his beard a few solemn strokes. It was short and pointed and just covered his chin. The crucible cast you together, Simon. You're meant to watch out for him. From Chapter 3, Simon Snow and the Second Serpent. Copyright 2003 by Gemma T. Leslie. 4. The squirrels on campus were beyond domestic. They were practically The squirrels on campus were beyond domestic. They were practically domestically abusive. If you were eating anything at all, they'd come right up to you and chit 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 in your space. Take it, Cass said, tossing a chunk of strawberry soy bar to the fat red squirrel at her feet. She took a photo of it with her phone and sent it to Abel. Bully squirrel, she typed. Abel had sent her photos of his room, his suite at Motec, and of him standing with all 5 of his big nerdy Big Bang Theory roommates. Kath tried to imagine asking Reagan to pose for a photo and laughed a little out loud. The squirrel froze but didn't run away. On Wednesdays and Fridays, Kath had 45 minutes between biology and fiction writing, and lately she'd been killing it. Right here, sitting in a shadowy patch of grass on the slow side of the English building. Nobody to deal with here, nobody but the squirrels. She checked her text messages, even though her phone hadn't chimed. She and Abel hadn't actually talked since Kath left for school. 3 weeks ago, left for school 3 weeks ago. But he did text her, and he emailed her every once in a while. He said he was fine, that the competition at Missouri was already intense. Everybody here was the smartest kid in their graduating class. Kath had resisted the urge to reply, except for you, right? Just because Abel got a perfect score in the math section of the SATs didn't mean he was the smartest kid in their class. He was crap in American history, and he limped through Spanish. Through Spanish, for Christ's sakes. He already told Kath he wasn't coming back to Omaha until Thanksgiving, and she hadn't tried to convince him to come any sooner. She didn't really miss him yet. Wren would say that was because Abel wasn't really Kath's boyfriend. It was one of their reoccurring conversations. He's a perfectly good boyfriend, Kath would say. He's an end table, Wren would answer. He's always there for me, to set magazines on. Would you rather I dated someone like Jesse, so we can both stay up crying every weekend? I would rather you dated someone you'd actually like to kiss. I've kissed Abel. Oh, stop, Kath. You're making my brain throw up. We've been dating for 3 years. He's my boyfriend. You have stronger feelings for Baz and Simon. Duh, they're Baz and Simon. Like that's even fair. I like Abel. He's steady. You just keep describing an end table. Wren had started going out with boys in the 8th grade, 2 years before Kath was even thinking about it. And until Jesse Sandoz, Wren hadn't stayed with the same guy for more than a few months. She kept Jesse around so long because she was never really sure that he liked her. At least that was Kath's theory. Wren usually lost interest in a guy as soon as she'd won him over. The conversion was her favorite part. That moment, she told Kath, when you realize the guy's looking at you differently, that you're taking up more space in his field of vision, that moment when you know he can't see past you anymore. Kath had liked that line. Kath had liked that last line so much she gave it to Baz a few weeks later. Wren was annoyed when she read it. Anyway, Jesse never really converted. He never had eyes only for Wren, not even after they had sex last fall. It threw off Wren's game. Kath was relieved when Jesse got a football scholarship to Iowa State. He didn't have the attention span for a long distance relationship, and there were at least 10,000 fresh guys at the University of Nebraska for Wren to convert. Kath tossed another hunk of protein bar to the squirrel, but somebody in a pair of periwinkle wingtips took a step too close to them, and the squirrel startled and lumbered away. Fat campus squirrels, Kath thought. They lumber. The wingtips took another step toward her and then stopped. Kath looked up. There was a guy standing in front of her from where she was sitting and where she was standing. With the sun behind his head, he seemed 8 feet tall. She squinted up but didn't recognize him. Kath, he said, right? She recognized his voice. It was the boy with the dark hair who sat in front of her fiction writing, Nick. Right, she said. Did you finish your writing exercise? Professor Piper had asked them to write 100 words from the perspective of an inanimate object. Kath nodded, still squinting up at him. Oh, sorry, Nick said, stepping out of the sun and sitting on the grass next to her. He dropped his bag between his knees. So, what'd you write about? A lock, she said. You? Ballpoint pen, he grimaced. I'm worried that everyone is going to do a pen. Don't be, she said. A pen is a terrible idea. Nick laughed and Kath looked down at the grass. So, he asked, do you think she'll make us read them out loud? Kath's head snapped up. No, why would she do that? They always do that, he said, like it was something Kath should already know. She wasn't used to seeing Nick in the front. He had a boyish face with hooded blue eyes and blocky black eyebrows that almost met in the middle. He looked like someone with a steerage ticket on the Titanic, somebody who had been standing at Ellis Island, undiluted and old-blooded, also cute. But there wouldn't be a time in class for all of us to read, she said. We'll probably break up into groups first, he said, again, like she should know this. Oh, I'm kind of new around here. Are you a freshman? She nodded and rolled her eyes. How did a freshman get into Professor Piper's 300 level class? I asked. Nick raised his furry eyebrow and pushed out his bottom lip, impressed. Do you really think a pen is a terrible idea? I'm not sure what you want me to say now, Kath answered. Do you have an eating disorder? Reagan asked. Kath was sitting on her bed studying. Reagan was holding out to her closet door, hoping to try to pull on a black heel boot. She was probably on her way to work. Reagan was always on her way somewhere. She treated their room like a way station, a place she stopped between class and the library, between her job at the student union and her job at Olive Garden, a place to change clothes, dump books, and pick up Levi. Sometimes there were other guys too. Already in the last month there had been Nathan and Kyle, but none of them seemed to be a permanent part of Reagan's solar system like Levi was, which made Levi a part of Cass' solar system too. He'd seen her on campus today and walked with her all the way to the Old Father Hall, talking about some mittens he had bought outside of the student union. Hand knit in Ecuador. Have you ever seen an alpaca, Catherine? They're like the world's most adorable llamas. Like, imagine the cutest llama that you can, and then just keep going. And their wool, it's not really wool, it's fiber and it's hypoallergenic. Reagan was staring at Kath now, frowning. She was wearing tight black jeans and a black top. Maybe she was going out, not to work. Your trash can is full of energy bar wrappers, Reagan said. You were looking through my trash? Kath felt a rush of anger. Levi was looking for a place to spit out his gum. So do you have an eating disorder? No, Cass said. I'm pretty sure. Right. Cass said, pretty sure it was exactly what she'd say if she did have an eating disorder. Then why don't you eat real food? I do. Kath clenched her fist. Her skin felt drawn and tight. Just not here. Are you one of those freaky eaters? No. Kath looked up at the ceiling, deciding that this was one of those times when the truth would be simpler than a lie. I don't know where the dining hall is. You've been living here for more than a month? Or you've been living here for more than a month. I know. And you haven't found the dining hall? I haven't actually looked. Why haven't you asked someone? You could have asked me. Kath rolled her eyes and looked at Reagan. Do you really want me asking these stupid questions? If they're about food, water, air, or shelter, yes. Jesus, Kath, I'm your roommate. Okay, Kath said, turning back to her book. So noted. Do you want me to show you where the dining hall is? No, that's okay. You can't keep living off diet bars. You're running out. I'm not running out, Reagan sighed. Levi might have eaten a few. You're letting your boyfriend steal my protein bars? Kath leaned over her bed, to check on her stash. All the boxes were open. He said he was doing you a favor, Reagan said, forcing the issue. And he's not my boyfriend, exactly. This is a violation, Kath said angrily, forgetting for a moment that Reagan was probably the most intimidating person she'd ever met. Get your shoes, Reagan. I'm showing you. Uh, Uh, get your shoes, Reagan said. I'm showing you where the dining hall is. No, Kath could already feel the anxiety start to tear her stomach into nervous little pieces. It's not just that. I don't like new places, new situations. There'll be all those people. I won't know where to sit. I don't want to go. Reagan sat at the end of her own bed, folding her arms. Have you been go, have you been going to class? Of course. How? Class is different, Cass said. There's something to focus on. It's still bad, but it's tolerable. Are you on drugs? No. Maybe you should be. Kath pushed her fists onto her bed. This isn't any of your business. You don't even know me. This, Reagan said, this is why I didn't want a freshman roommate. Why do you even care? Am I bothering you? We're going to dinner right now. No, we're not. Get your student ID. I'm not going to dinner with you. You don't even like me. I like you fine, Reagan said. This is ridiculous. Jesus Christ, aren't you hungry? Kath was squeezing her fists so hard her knuckles were going white. She thought about chicken fried steak and scalloped potatoes and strawberry rhubarb pie and wondered whether the pound dining hall had an ice cream machine like Selleck did. And she thought about winning, about how she was letting this win, whatever this was, this crazy inside of her. Kath, 0, crazy 1,000,000. She leaned over, compressing the knot in her stomach. Then she stood up to as much dig- Then she stood up with as much dignity as she could scavenge to put on her veils. I have been eating real food, she muttered. I eat at Selleck with my sister. Reagan opened the door. Then why don't you eat here? Because I waited too long. I built up I built up a block about it. It's too hard to explain. Seriously, why aren't you on drugs? Kath walked past out of her room. Are you a licensed psychologist, or do you just play one on TV? I'm on drugs, Reagan said. They're a beautiful thing. There was no awkward moment. There was no awkward moment in the dining hall. No standing in the doorway with a tray trying to decide the most innocuous place to sit. Reagan sat at the first empty table she came across. She didn't even nod to the other people sitting there. Aren't you going to be late for work? Kath asked. I'm going out, but I'm going to eat dinner here first anyway. We pay for all these meals. Might as well eat them. Kath's tray had a plate of baked macaroni and 2 bowls of Brussels sprouts. She was ravenous. Reagan took a big bite of pasta salad. Her long hair fell over her shoulders. It was a dozen shades of red and gold, none of them quite natural. Do you really think that I don't like you? She asked with her mouth full. Kath swallowed. She and Reagan had never had a conversation before today, never mind a serious one. I'm getting the feeling you don't want a roommate. I don't want a roommate, Reagan frowned. She frowned as much as Levi smiled. But that has nothing to do with you. Why live in the dorms then? You're not a freshman, right? I didn't think the upperclassmen lived on campus. I have to, Reagan said, as part of my scholarship. I was supposed to get my own room this year. I was on the list, but all the residence halls are over capacity. Sorry, Kath said. It's not your fault. I didn't want a roommate either, Kath said. I mean, I thought I was going to live with my sister. You have a sister who goes here? Twin. Ew, weird. Why is that weird? Kath asked. It just is. It's creepy, like having a doppelganger. Are you identical? Technically. Ew, Reagan shuddered melodramatically. It's not creepy, Kath said. What's wrong with you? Reagan grimaced and shuddered again. So why aren't you living with your sister? She wanted to meet new people, Kath said. You make it sound like she broke up with you. Kath speared another Brussels sprouts. She lives in Shram, she said to her tray. When she looked up, Reagan was scowling at her. You're making me feel sorry for you again, Reagan said. Kath turned her fork on Reagan. Don't feel sorry for me. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I can't help it, Reagan said. You're really pathetic. I am not. You are. You don't have any friends. Your sister dumped you. You're a freaky eater, and you've got some weird thing about Simon Snow. I object to every single thing you just said. Reagan chewed and frowned. She was wearing dark red lipstick. I have lots of friends, Cass said. I never seen them. I just got here. Most of my friends went to other schools or they're online. Internet friends don't count. Why not? Reagan shrugged disdainfully. And I don't have a weird thing with Simon Snow, Cass said. I'm just really active in the fandom. What the fuck is a fandom? You wouldn't understand, Cass said, wishing she hadn't used that word, knowing that if she tried to explain herself any further, it would just make it worse. Reagan wouldn't believe or understand that Kath wasn't just a Simon fan. She was one of the fans, a first name only fan with fans of her own. If she told Reagan that her Simon fix regularly got 20,000 hits, Reagan would just laugh at her. Plus, saying all that out loud would make Kath feel like a complete asshole. You've got Simon Snow heads on your desk, Reagan said. Those are commemorative busts. I feel sorry for you, and I'm going to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend, Cass said, as sternly as she could. I like that we're not friends. Me too, Reagan said. I'm sorry you ruined it by being so pathetic. Welcome to Fix.net, where the story never ends. We are a volunteer-run archive and forum, accepting quality fiction from all fandoms. Volunteer or make a donation here. Set up a fanfix.net author profile here. You must be 13 years or older to submit or comment at fanfix.net. Fanfix.net homepage, welcome message, retrieved July 1st, 2011. Okay, I'm going to take a short break, and I'm going to end this video, and then we will resume with Chapter 5.